James Carter watched as Daniel Wilson stepped out of his truck, unloading boxes with quiet efficiency. James's sneer deepened. Here was exactly the kind of problem that required his family's special attention. The cross burning on Daniel's property 3 nights later was meant as a subtle warning, James's way of explaining how things worked in their corner of Georgia. But what James couldn't see beneath Daniel's calm exterior was 20 years of Special Forces training, controlled lethality disguised as civilian respectability. When James's crew surrounded the farmhouse with torches, they thought they were teaching fear to another soft target. Daniel Wilson, however, was about to show them what a real lesson looked like. The gravel crunched under Daniel's boots as he surveyed the 47 acres that were now his. Rolling hills stretched toward ancient oak trees, their branches forming natural boundaries with neighboring farmland. A 2-story farmhouse stood at the center, its weathered white paint still solid, with a wraparound porch facing the morning sun. "This will do just fine," he murmured, pulling his military duffel from the truck bed. 2 decades of Special Forces deployments had taught him to value simplicity: 4 walls, a roof, and enough space to breathe without neighbors peering over his shoulder. The drive from Fort Bragg had taken him through small towns that blurred together, but Millbrook felt different when he first saw it 3 months ago. Perhaps it was the Chattahoochee River curving around the valley, or the mountains rising like protective walls in the distance. Or maybe he just needed to believe somewhere could feel like home. Daniel walked his property's perimeter, noting sight lines and natural cover out of habit. Old training died hard. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away, close enough for emergencies, far enough for privacy. Perfect. An hour later, he drove into town for supplies. Millbrook's main street looked like a 1950s postcard. Murphy's Hardware, Daisy's Diner, and the First National Bank lined up like dominoes. American flags hung from every lamppost and flower boxes adorned the sidewalks. The bell above Murphy's Hardware chimed as Daniel entered. Conversation stopped. 3 men in work clothes turned to stare, their eyes tracking him to the tool section. "Help you find something?" The clerk, a thin man with graying hair, asked neutrally. "Just browsing, thanks," Daniel replied, selecting a hammer, nails, and a deadbolt lock. Basic security measures. At the counter, the clerk rang up his purchases without eye contact. "You're the fellow who bought the Henderson place?" "That's right. Been empty 2 years since old Jim passed." The clerk's tone suggested this was significant. "Shame to see it sit vacant." Daniel nodded, paying in cash. Behind him, whispers weren't quite quiet enough. 47 acres. Paid cash from what I heard. City money, probably Atlanta. Maybe Birmingham. Wonder what he plans to do with all that land. The bell chimed again as Daniel left, their stares following through the window. At Daisy's Diner, he slid into a corner booth, back to the wall, another old habit. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair in a neat bun, approached with a coffee pot. "Afternoon, honey. I'm Betty Hawthorne. You must be our new neighbor." Her smile seemed genuine, unlike the hardware stores. Reception. "Daniel Wilson. Pleasure to meet you, ma'am." "Oh, listen to those manners. Your mama raised you right." Betty poured his coffee with practiced efficiency. "What brings you to our little corner of Georgia?" "Looking for quiet." Seemed like a good place to find it. Betty's expression flickered, something between sympathy and concern. "Well, Millbrook's certainly that, most of the time." She hesitated, then leaned closer. "People here take time to warm up to newcomers. Don't take it personal." Daniel met her eyes. "I appreciate the advice. Of course, once folks get to know you, they're good people. Just set in their ways, you understand." Her emphasis on "their ways" suggested more than small-town conservatism. Daniel nodded anyway. After lunch, he stopped at the post office to forward his mail. The clerk, a nervous young man with acne scars, processed his paperwork with shaking hands. "Military forwarding address," the clerk noted, reading Daniel's form. "Thank you for your service. Just doing my job." 20 years, says here. That's impressive." Daniel signed the final form, ready to try civilian life. Driving home, he noticed a pickup truck following at a distance. When he turned onto his gravel driveway, the truck continued past, but slowly enough for him to glimpse two men inside, the passenger holding a cell phone to his ear. That evening, Daniel stood on his porch, watching the sun set behind the oaks. Crickets chirped in the gathering darkness, and a dog barked in the distance. The peace he sought felt within reach. From the tree line, a camera lens caught the dying light, focusing on his silhouette. Daniel remained unaware, lost in thoughts of the quiet life he planned to build, while in the shadows, other plans were taking shape. Within the first week, Daniel established a routine. Dawn workouts in his backyard, property maintenance, and brief trips to town for supplies. He kept interactions polite but minimal, nodding to neighbors who acknowledged him. Most didn't. The farmhouse needed work. Loose porch boards, a leaky kitchen faucet, windows stuck from years of humidity. Daniel welcomed the labor. It kept his hands busy and his mind off the weight of civilian life. On Thursday morning, while replacing rotted porch planks, Deputy Jake Morrison's patrol car pulled into his driveway. The young officer stepped out, adjusting his duty belt nervously. "Morning, Mr. Wilson. I'm Deputy Morrison. Just wanted to introduce myself, make sure you're settling in okay." Daniel set down his hammer. "Appreciate you stopping by, Deputy. Everything's fine." Morrison glanced around, noting the neat stacks of lumber and tools. "Doing some renovations? Place needs work. Nothing major." Morrison kicked at the gravel. "Look, Mr. Wilson, I know folks here can seem standoffish at first. It's nothing personal, just takes time for people to get comfortable with change." His careful words suggested this wasn't a casual visit. "I understand, Deputy. I'm not looking for trouble." "I'm sure you're not. Just, if anything comes up, anything at all, call me directly." Morrison handed him a business card with his personal cell number written on the back. Day or night. After the deputy left, Daniel studied the card. In his experience, when law enforcement offered help preemptively, it meant they expected you'd need it. That evening, 8 miles across town, James Carter slammed his beer bottle on a scarred wooden table in an abandoned barn reeking of old hay and motor oil, lit by camping lanterns casting dancing shadows. 47 acres, James spat. "Right in the heart of our county, and nobody thought to tell me until after the deed was signed." "James, calm down," said Ray Peters, a rail-thin man with yellowed teeth. "Maybe he's just passing through. Lots of folks buy property and never do nothing with it. You see his truck, his clothes? This ain't some weekend warrior." "Playing farmer," James's voice rose. "This is somebody with money, somebody with plans." Frank Miller, the bank president, shifted uncomfortably in his pressed khakis and polo shirt, looking out of place at 52 among the others. "I'm sure we're getting worked up over nothing. One man can't change. One man can change everything." James's fist hit the table. "That's how it starts. First one, then his family, then his friends. Before you know it, we got a whole different kind of neighborhood." "What are you suggesting we do about it?" asked Carl Dixon, a mechanic from the Ford dealership. His hands still stained black. James paced the barn. "I'm suggesting we make our position clear. Let him know he ain't welcome. Give him a chance to reconsider his investment." Frank cleared his throat. "James, we need to be careful. We can't afford attention from outside authorities. Your position at the bank is exactly why we can afford to take action." James's eyes glittered. "You think I don't know where our funding comes from? You want to keep playing dress-up in your fancy office, pretending you ain't one of us?" Frank's face reddened. "I've supported this organization for 15 years. Don't question my commitment." "Then prove it. We need to send a message before this Wilson fellow gets too comfortable." Ray leaned forward. "What kind of message?" James smiled, his weathered face turning predatory. "The kind that's been effective for generations. Start small, let him know he's being watched, then escalate until he gets the picture." "And if he doesn't?" Carl asked. "Then we make it clearer." Frank stood abruptly. "I need to get home. My wife's expecting me." "Of course she is," James said. "Go back to your comfortable life, Frank. Just remember, that comfort depends on keeping certain kinds of people in their place." After Frank left, the remaining men huddled closer, James outlining his plan in hushed tones as owls hooted. Outside, and a train whistle echoed across the valley. None noticed Betty Hawthorne, who'd come looking for her escaped cat and found something far more troubling behind the grain silo. The next morning, Daniel discovered the first sign: a 2-foot wooden cross planted in his front yard overnight. It hadn't been burned, but the message was clear. He pulled it from the ground, examined its amateur but deliberate construction, and carried it to his workshop. 20 years of military service taught him to recognize escalation patterns. This was step 1. He opened his laptop, typing notes in a secure document: date, time, incident description, potential suspects based on yesterday's observations in town. Old habits from intelligence gathering in hostile territories. Document everything, trust nothing to memory, prepare for what comes next. Outside, a pickup truck drove slowly past his driveway for the 3rd time that morning. Daniel noted the license plate and added it to his file. The game had begun, though his opponents didn't yet realize they were facing someone who'd mastered it over 2 decades. Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment escalated methodically. Daniel's mailbox was knocked over twice, requiring concrete reinforcement. His truck tires were slashed while he shopped, forcing a tow truck and enduring the townspeople's knowing looks. Phone calls started Tuesday: heavy breathing, racial slurs, threats in disguised voices at all hours. Daniel documented each incident with military precision, but didn't report them. Deputy Morrison drove by more frequently, his expression troubled. On Friday, Daniel needed supplies from Murphy's: hardware, replacement hinges, and a new deadbolt. The same thin clerk rang up his purchases nervously. "Having security issues?" he asked, eyeing the heavy-duty lock. "Just being cautious." As Daniel headed for the door, a heavy-set man in work clothes blocked his path, face flushed with anger or alcohol. "You're the one bought the Henderson place," he said, not a question. "That's right." Daniel kept his voice neutral, recognizing the confrontational stance. "James Carter. Been hearing a lot about you around town. All good things, I hope." James's laugh was harsh. "Depends on your perspective. Some folks think you made a mistake coming here. Think you'd be happier somewhere else." "I'm plenty happy where I am." "Are you now?" James stepped closer, reeking of beer and tobacco. "Funny thing about happiness, it can disappear real quick when you ain't where you belong." The store went quiet, customers pretending to browse while listening. "Where exactly do you think I belong?" Daniel asked. "Atlanta, Birmingham, Detroit. Plenty of places more suitable for your kind." Daniel felt the familiar calm before violence, blood pressure dropping, vision sharpening, time slowing. "My kind? Don't play stupid. You know what I mean." James's voice rose. "This is a decent community, a family community. We don't need outside elements changing things, bringing their problems." "What problems would those be? Crime? Drugs? The kind of trouble that follows certain people?" James was shouting now. "This ain't the inner city. This is our home, and we protect what's ours." Daniel stepped forward. "I'm a retired military veteran who paid cash for my property and minds his own business. If that threatens you, the problem isn't with me." James's face darkened. "You think that uniform gives you special privilege? Makes you better than us?" "I think it makes me someone who fought for every American's right to live where they choose." Pretty words. James's hand moved toward his belt, revealing a knife handle. But words don't change reality, and the reality is, you ain't welcome here. Daniel calculated angles and exits, but civilian consequences differed from the battlefield. He stepped back. "I appreciate you making your position clear. Now you know mine. I'm staying." James's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." Daniel walked past him. "Yes, we will." That evening, Daniel called his sister, Sarah, in Atlanta. Her voice brightened. "Daniel, I was wondering when you'd check in. How's the new place?" "It's complicated." He sat on his porch, watching the sunset. "Had an interesting conversation in town today." "What kind of interesting?" Sarah's concern was sharp. "The kind that reminds you not everyone's happy about change." "Are you in trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle." "That's not what I asked. Are you safe?" "I'm fine, Sarah. Just feeling my way through small-town politics." "Small-town politics don't usually make you sound like you're planning a military operation." She paused. You can come stay with me in Atlanta. My guest room's always open. I'm not running from this. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to be smart. If people are threatening you, nobody's threatening me. Somebody suggested I'd be happier elsewhere, but that's their problem, not mine. Sarah was quiet. Promise me, if this gets worse, if you're in real danger, you'll call me. Don't handle everything alone like you always do. I promise. After hanging up, Daniel checked his locks, latches, and sight lines. He pulled his service pistol from its case, performing a function check. At 10:30, reviewing property surveys, he heard gravel crunching, multiple vehicles, engines low. He killed the lights and moved to the front window. 6 trucks blocked. His driveway, dark shapes moving between them, carrying torches. They'd positioned themselves to cut off escape routes surrounding the house. Professional work. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. No way out. Time to talk. 8 men advanced in formation, James Carter leading, his face twisted with satisfaction. They spread out along the porch, 2 moving to the sides, 1 to the back. They waited, forcing Daniel to come to them or face a break-in. A rock wrapped in paper shattered the front window, glass scattering. Wilson, James's voice carried. Time for that conversation. More rocks broke side windows, then the kitchen and bedroom windows. They weren't breaking in, they were flushing him out. A Molotov cocktail splashed fire across the living room, then another in the kitchen. Smoke filled the house. Daniel had seconds, burn alive or face 8 armed men. He kicked open the front door, rolled onto the porch, pistol ready. 3 men rushed him as others provided light. He dropped one with a precise shot, wounded another, but a tire iron hit his wrist, sending his pistol into the darkness. The fight lasted 30 seconds. 8 against 1 with clubs and chains was mathematics no training could overcome. Daniel went down swinging, taking 2 more, but the outcome was inevitable. The last thing he saw was James standing over him with a bloody tire iron, his house burning. Welcome to Millbrook, James said, bringing the iron down again. Daniel regained consciousness slowly, cataloging injuries. Broken ribs, possible concussion, scalp cuts, dislocated shoulder, blood crusted on his lips and nose. But he was alive. He was chained to a support beam in an abandoned barn, shackles around his wrists linked to a rusted chain. Moonlight filtered through wooden gaps, illuminating dust and old equipment. Voices outside were angry. Should have finished it at his house, Carl Dixon said. James wanted him to suffer first. Ray Peters replied. Make an example. Where the hell is James? Been 2 hours since he went to get Frank. Daniel tested his restraints. The chain solid, the beam thick. These weren't amateurs anymore. The barn door creaked, and James entered with Frank. Miller, who looked pale, his banker's composure shattered. Jesus Christ, James, this has gone too far, Frank whispered. We're talking kidnapping now, federal charges. We're talking about sending a message that needed sending 20 years ago, James snapped. You want to back out now, after your money bought the gasoline that burned his house? I never agreed to torture, James backhanded Frank, the sound echoing. You agreed the moment you wrote the first check. You're in it now. Daniel watched Frank crumble, seeing the moment he realized he'd crossed an uncrossable line. Look who's awake. James noticed Daniel's open eyes. Good. I was worried we'd hit you too hard. Not hard enough, apparently, Daniel replied, voice steady despite pain. James laughed, pulling a chair closer. See, you came to our town thinking you could take what you wanted, our land, our way of life. But everything has a price. I paid the asking price in cash. Money ain't the only currency. Some things gotta be earned. Respect, belonging, the right to call a place home. Daniel tested the chains, checking for weak points. The beam was solid oak, the shackles modern, purpose-bought. So what's the lesson? Daniel asked. Simple. You leave Millbrook tonight, never come back, and we let you drive away. Stay. James gestured around the barn. Well, accidents happen, especially to outsiders who don't know local hazards. And if I agree to leave, you sign over the deed. Frank handles the paperwork, and we give you a 10-minute head start before we call it in as a home. Invasion gone wrong. Your body burned in the fire. Real tragedy. Frank made a choking sound. James, you can't be serious. This is murder. This is survival. James's voice had a dangerous edge. You think this stops with one man? If we let him stay, others follow. In 5 years, our children won't recognize their hometown. Daniel noted the dynamics. Frank was the weak link, funding extremism from his office, but unable to stomach violence. James was the true believer. What's it going to be, Wilson? James asked. Easy way or hard way? I need time to think. James's laugh was harsh. Time's up. Frank, get those papers ready. As Frank fumbled with a briefcase, Daniel made his move. The shackles were secure, but the chain was threaded through a rusty eye bolt in the beam. He'd been working it loose during the conversation. When James turned to Frank, Daniel threw his weight against the chain. The eye bolt tore free with a crack, sending him stumbling with 6 feet of chain attached. He's loose! Ray shouted. Daniel swung the chain, catching Carl across the chest, dropping him. James lunged with a knife, but Daniel trapped his arm, driving a knee into his solar plexus. Frank screamed, running for the door, but Ray was there with a shotgun. Nobody moves! Daniel froze, the chain heavy in his hands. Drop the chain, Ray ordered, voice shaking. Sure, Daniel smiled coldly. But you should know something. I'm not some random victim. I'm a special forces operator with 20 years hunting people like you. And now I know who you are, where you live, what you're capable of. The barn went silent except for James's gasping. Here's what's going to happen, Daniel continued. I'm walking out tonight, and then I'm going to show you what a real education looks like. Ray's finger tightened on the trigger, but hesitation cost him. Daniel moved, using James as a shield, closing the distance. The shotgun blast went wide, tearing barn wall chunks. Daniel's chain wrapped. Fist hit Ray's temple. The fight lasted 30 seconds. 4 men lay unconscious, and Daniel stood alone, still shackled, but no one's prisoner. He picked up Ray's shotgun and Frank's briefcase, then walked into the night. The hunter had become the hunted. Daniel spent the first hour removing the shackles with tools from the barn's workshop. Patience, learned through escape and evasion training, prevented mistakes. By dawn, he'd established a base in an abandoned hunting cabin 3 miles from his burned property, on state land, invisible from roads with clear sight lines. He'd found it during initial surveys. Always know your terrain. Opening Frank's briefcase, he spread out bank statements, property deeds, and a Millbrook Heritage Society roster. 12 names, addresses, phone numbers, financial contributions. James Carter lived on Elm Street in a double-wide trailer. Ray Peters had an apartment above his auto parts store. Carl Dixon owned a house on the outskirts. Frank had compiled dossiers, employment, family, criminal records. Daniel photographed everything, uploading to an encrypted cloud server. Next, reconnaissance. For 2 days, he moved through Millbrook like a ghost, observing James's routine. Morning beer runs, afternoons at Ray's store, evenings at Murphy's bar. Ray opened his store at 8, closed at 6. Lived alone except for weekend visits from his ex-wife's kids. Carl worked irregular hours but spent evenings with his wife and daughter. His house had a security system, but the installation was amateur. Across town, James discovered his problems multiplying. At Ray's store, nursing a beer and a headache, he and the others processed their losses. He's military, Carl said, ice pack on his ribs. Real military. We knew that, James snapped. Don't make him Superman. Superman don't break chains and drop 4 armed men in 30 seconds, Ray muttered, eye swollen. Frank sat silently, staring at his hands. Frank? James's voice was dangerous. My briefcase is gone. Names, addresses, financial records. So what? Ain't nothing illegal about a heritage society. The bank records show payments to you, James. If those get to the wrong people... James paced. We're going to find this Wilson and finish what we started. Find him where? Carl demanded. His house burned. His truck's impounded. Far as anyone knows, he's dead or gone. He ain't gone. He's here. Planning. The men glanced at the windows, the sun turning them into mirrors, reflecting their worried faces. Maybe we should call this off, Ray suggested. Cut our losses. You think he's going to forget? James whirled. One man with military training and a grudge who knows where we live. Frank whispered, we should have left him alone. James backhanded him. Too late for should-haves. Either we finish it or he finishes us. That evening, Daniel targeted Ray's apartment above his store. The old brick building's fire escape was unmaintained. At midnight, he climbed to the second-floor window, opening the latch with a credit card. Ray slept, snoring loudly. Daniel photographed documents, computer files, hidden cash, and a closet of racist memorabilia. He found an address book with contacts outside Millbrook. This wasn't just local. He planted 3 listening devices and left silently. The next night, he hit Carl's house, bypassing the amateur security system. Carl's office held correspondence with supremacist groups, weapons receipts and rally photos. Daniel copied everything to portable drives, planted surveillance, and left Carl's family's rooms untouched. James's trailer was tougher, on an isolated lot with clear sight lines. Daniel studied it for 3 nights. Inside, he found an armory, rifles, ammunition, explosives, plans for attacks on black families, liberal churches, Jewish businesses. Text messages and emails with Frank revealed the banker's deep involvement, including illegal financial transfers. Daniel photographed everything, planted devices, and left a photo of James sleeping on his nightstand. I can reach you anywhere. By week's end, Daniel had real-time intelligence from 4 listening devices and hidden cameras. He had enough evidence to destroy them legally, but wasn't interested in legal channels yet. They'd burned his house and chained him. Now he'd teach them fear. In one decisive night, Daniel dismantled their operation. Ray's weapons and cash vanished from his basement. Carl's truck was stripped to its frame in his driveway. James's trailer was cleaned of illegal items, leaving only photographic evidence. Using Frank's access codes, Daniel downloaded 5 years of bank records, transaction logs, and communications documenting illegal funding. By dawn, he'd crippled their capabilities. The first panicked call came at 6 a.m. James, they're gone, Ray's voice cracked. Every weapon, every round. Professional. Check your truck. Ray's cry followed. Oh God, Carl's truck. Across the lot, Carl's pickup was a bare chassis, stripped of engine, transmission, wheels, seats. He hit all of us, James whispered. By noon, Frank discovered the banking breach, hyperventilating over unauthorized data transfers. 5 years of records, he gasped. Transaction histories, communications, he got it all. How? James demanded. From my terminal during business hours, but I was in meetings. James's paranoia crystallized. Nothing's impossible for this guy. We've been playing defense while he runs circles around us. If this gets to federal authorities, Frank said, we're dead men. Prison, maybe domestic terrorism charges. James's voice turned calm, which means we got nothing left to lose. Carl arrived at James's trailer, pale. My neighbors are asking about the truck. Heard machinery at 3 a.m., thought it was road construction. Road construction? That strips a vehicle? Ray laughed bitterly. This Wilson's got military training, professional equipment, and he's making us look like amateurs. Because we are, Frank said, disheveled. Shopkeepers and mechanics playing soldier. Against someone who was a soldier, James backhanded him. Shut up. No, I won't. Frank wiped blood from his lip. This has gone beyond anything rational. We need to cut our losses. Run and hope he doesn't turn over the evidence? James shouted. You think he's going to forget? Ray spoke quietly. What are you suggesting? Stop reacting and start acting. He's local, can't have gone far without transportation. He's been too active to be outside the area. James spread a county map. He's watching us, so he's within surveillance range, probably using the state forest for cover. You want to hunt a special forces operator? Carl's voice was hysterical. That's suicide. Better than waiting for the FBI. James folded the map. He burned his house. His truck's impounded. Where's he staying? Motel? Rental? Camping? Frank shook his head. This is insane. We should be hiring lawyers. With what money? You think your bank keeps you after this hits the news? The reality settled like a shroud. They'd backed themselves into a corner where violence seemed the only option, exactly what Daniel wanted them to think. Dawn broke over Millbrook with ominous quiet. James stood in an abandoned grain warehouse, now a command center for 37 armed extremists from 4 states, local chapter members, militia fighters, independent operators. Listen up, James's voice carried. This ain't just about one man anymore. It's about sending a message that we don't bow to federal intimidation. The men nodded, carrying assault rifles, tactical gear, night vision, and ample ammunition. Carl, at the group's edge, paled, realizing what he'd helped unleash. James, my daughter's school is 2 miles from here. If this turns into a shooting war... You should have thought of that before funding this, James snapped. Ray pulled him aside. Half these guys I never seen before. Some look like they're hoping for a fight. With police, federal, agents, doesn't matter. Good. We need men with backbone. That ain't backbone. That's crazy. Ray gestured at Alabama men discussing explosives enthusiastically. They're talking about taking out bridges, cutting communication lines. This ain't about Wilson anymore. James's jaw tightened. Maybe it's time to stop hiding behind respectability and take a real stand. Against one retired soldier who embarrassed us? Ray's voice rose. You're going to get people killed. Innocent people. Innocent people are under attack every day by federal overreach, outsiders changing our communities. James's fervor grew. Wilson's just the tip of the spear. 3 miles away, Daniel completed preparations in the state forest. Motion sensors covered every approach. Non-lethal but disorienting explosives were at choke points. 3 fallback positions offered overlapping fields of fire and cached supplies. He'd established communication with federal authorities racing toward Millbrook. His satellite phone buzzed. Mr. Wilson, we have eyes on the warehouse, Agent Chen said. 30-plus armed individuals, multiple out-of-state vehicles. This has escalated. How long until your teams arrive? 2 hours. Can you maintain your position? I can do better. I can ensure this happens away from civilian areas. Some of these individuals have federal warrants. Others are known domestic terrorists. If shooting starts, it's a significant engagement. All the more reason to control where it happens. Daniel checked his weapons. Agent Chen, ensure the evidence I uploaded, financial records, communications, weapons caches, gets to the right people, and make sure Deputy Morrison knows he was right to be concerned. He's one of the good ones. Daniel settled into his primary position, watching scout teams follow tracks he'd left deliberately. At the warehouse, the operation fractured. Frank arrived, begging James to stop. The bank received federal investigators this morning. They have everything. Transactions, communications. Nothing's over until we say it's over. James grabbed Frank's shirt. You started this with the first check. I never agreed to armed confrontation with federal agents. Frank's composure cracked. Carl felt something break inside him. His daughter Sarah would be out of school in 6 hours. His wife Mary, unaware at the grocery store. I'm out, Carl announced. My family doesn't deserve this. Local men looked uncomfortable, but out-of-state fighters laughed. Family man's getting cold feet, a Tennessee man called. My daughter matters more than your cause, Carl said. Your daughter's going to grow up in a country you won't recognize if we don't take a stand, James countered. The psychological pressure held the coalition together, but cracks formed. Local men had second thoughts. Outside agitators pushed for violence. Daniel watched the assault begin at dawn. 37 men spread in a skirmish line, moving with discipline but on unfamiliar terrain. Motion sensors and cameras fed him data. The first explosion scattered the eastern flank, more sound than fury, but enough to unnerve them. Contact! IED detonation! Someone screamed. No casualties, but we're taking fire. Daniel wasn't shooting. It was their imagination. He wanted panic. Calm down, James's voice crackled. It's one man with homemade bombs. But formation broke as teams sought cover. Daniel triggered a second charge at a choke point, adding muzzle flashes from remote devices, simulating multiple shooters. Multiple contacts, high ground! The Alabama group pushed ahead, eager, while locals hesitated. Daniel broadcast on their frequency. This is Daniel Wilson. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and in over your heads. Last chance to surrender. A storm of gunfire answered, revealing positions and wasting ammunition. At the warehouse, Frank monitored radio traffic with horror. Tommy, call them back. He's picking them apart. Shut up, Frank. We got him pinned. Listen to your radio traffic. Carl heard neighbors shouting panicked reports. Daniel executed a fighting withdrawal, triggering a third charge as the Tennessee group flanked his supposed position, then moving to his second position 500 yards north. The logging road was his kill zone, with no cover and overlapping fields of fire. He fired 3 aimed shots to herd them, sending men diving and screaming coordinates. Contact north! He's running for the road. Teams converged, abandoning discipline, exactly as Daniel planned. The first team, Ray, Carl's neighbor, and a 19-year-old, reached the road. Daniel triggered a flashbang, then fired precise shots, pinning them behind inadequate trees. We're pinned down. Need backup. More teams rushed in, clustering 25 men on a quarter-mile stretch. Daniel's engineered target. Tommy, you listening? Daniel radioed. Your men are bunched up. No cover, no coordination. I've got overlapping fields of fire from elevated positions. Federal agents are surrounding your warehouse. Tactical teams are inbound. One chance to end this without bloodshed. Kill him, James roared. The forest erupted in gunfire. Splintering trees, sparking rocks. Daniel was already at his final fallback, watching them waste ammunition. Federal helicopters echoed across the valley on schedule. All teams, push forward! James screamed. He's running out of tricks. But Daniel wasn't cornered. His position commanded the road with escape routes, placed between the extremists and Millbrook. Tommy, last warning, Daniel radioed. Federal teams are deploying. Surrender. It's a bluff, James shouted, but rotors grew louder. Locals wavered, looking skyward. Tommy, my daughter gets out in 4 hours, Carl said. I ain't dying for your crusade. You made your choice, James replied. This was supposed to protect our community, not start a war, Ray joined. At the warehouse, Frank raised his hands, holding a cell phone and handkerchief. This is Frank Miller. I'm surrendering. I have information. FBI helicopters circled, tactical vehicles approaching. Mr. Miller, remain in position. Agent Chen's bullhorn blared. Frank spilled everything, financial networks, the SBU, tactical situation. 37 armed individuals, he confirmed. Militias from Alabama, Tennessee, independent operators. Military weapons, tactical gear. And Mr. Wilson is engaging them alone? Chen asked. He lured them deliberately, keeping it away from town. In the forest, federal teams moved into position on the ridges, professional soldiers with advanced equipment. Some extremists tried to surrender, others prepared to fight. James's fervor held them. This is what we've been preparing for. The government's true face. Daniel decided James was the key. Remove him, and the rest would surrender. He aimed for a non-lethal shot, but James called out, Wilson, you want to end this? Face me like a man. Single combat. Winner takes. All. The forest quieted. What are the terms? Daniel asked. You and me, hand to hand, no weapons. If you win, my men surrender. If I win, we walk away. Tommy, no, Ray cracked. Just surrender. But James was beyond reason. Agent Chen, hold positions, Daniel radioed. I'm ending this without a firefight. Against Chen's protests, he walked to the clearing, hands visible. James emerged, face twisted with rage. 20 years I've watched our country get destroyed by people like you. It doesn't have to end this way. Let your men go. Home. My cause is keeping our community safe from outsiders. James charged, fists swinging. Daniel sidestepped, drove him to the ground with efficiency. It was over in seconds. It's finished, Daniel announced. Drop your, weapons. Rifles hit the ground as men raised hands. Federal agents moved in, securing the scene. In the aftermath, 37 men were processed, some defiant, others defeated. Mr. Wilson, what you've accomplished, dismantling a terror network single-handedly, is unprecedented, Agent Chen said. They did most of the work, Daniel replied. I just gave them rope. The evidence, financial records, communications, weapons caches is extraordinary. The Justice Department calls this the biggest domestic terrorism prosecution in the Southeast in decades. Deputy Morrison approached. Mr. Wilson, I owe you an apology. I knew something was wrong but lacked the courage to act. You tried to help. That's more than most. It wasn't enough. I let fear override my duty. Nothing like this will happen again, not on my watch. Chen interrupted. The conspiracy extends beyond today. Cells in Tennessee, Alabama, North and South Carolina, coordinating funding, weapons, training. They planned regional actions against minorities, Jewish targets, federal facilities. Timeline? Daniel asked. Escalation over 6 months, starting with you, then systematic intimidation across counties. But now their network is compromised. Arrests are coordinated across 4 states. In Millbrook's town square, Betty Hawthorne stood among residents watching the operation. Betty, did you know about James's group? Martha Phillips asked. I knew he was full of hate. Didn't know how far he'd go. Thank God for that. Wilson man standing up when we were too scared. What do we do now? Martha asked. Make sure our town doesn't breathe this poison again. Sarah called from outside Millbrook, having driven after seeing news reports. Daniel, I'm an hour out. Are you safe? It's over, Sarah. The news says you took on an army of supremacists single-handedly. That doesn't sound over. Rose, go back to Atlanta. Absolutely not. You're my brother, and you went through something traumatic. I'm not leaving. Chen approached. Mr. Wilson, we have intelligence about potential retaliation. These groups have a vengeance culture. You dismantled their network. That'll generate a response. What kind? Unknown actors, possibly from outside. They see you as a federal collaborator. We recommend relocation and protective custody. For how long? Indefinite. They have long memories. Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Wilson has a right to stay. If he does, he'll have local law enforcement's full protection. We're requesting state assistance to investigate every official, anyone who enabled. This will face justice. Daniel appreciated it, but rural law enforcement couldn't protect him from a regional conspiracy, and federal protection meant living as a prisoner of his success. A lone pickup approached the roadblock at sunset. An older man climbing out. You Wilson? He called. I am. Name's William Carter, James's grandfather. His eyes held cold hatred, tempered by intelligence. I taught that boy everything about protecting our people. Seems I didn't teach him enough. Sir, this is a federal crime scene, Chen said. This is between me and the man who destroyed my family, William replied. I'm not armed. I just want to talk. Daniel waved Chen back. Let him speak. I fought in Vietnam, 3 tours, William said. Saw plenty of soldiers who thought they were hot stuff. This ain't about service. It's about knowing your place. James made mistakes, got emotional, sloppy, but his heart was full of love for his community, his heritage. His heart was full of hate. You can't understand what it means to watch everything your family built torn down by outsiders. I understand fighting for something worth protecting. Do you? You helped the government destroy men preserving their way of life. Their way included burning crosses and beating people. William laughed bitterly. You think this started with James? You think it's about one town? You've unleashed something bigger. He showed text messages, 43 cells across, 7 states, asking how to help James's family, wanting to know who exposed them. You see, Mr. Wilson, James was emotional. I'm not. James acted locally, I think regionally. He got caught because anger clouded his judgment. I've been planning for 50 years. You're describing conspiracy to commit terrorism, Chen said. I'm describing the response to federal overreach, William countered. You've painted a target on every agent, every collaborator. You set James up to see how we'd respond. He was expendable. He served his purpose, William admitted. Now I know your capabilities, the federal response, the mistakes to avoid. There won't be a next time. Oh, there will. You assumed this was about territory, keeping outsiders from one town. It was about recruitment, radicalization, proving the government uses force against white Americans who organize. He gestured at the federal vehicles. This looks like tyranny to sympathizers. You've pushed fence-sitters into our camp. And you've given me you, the federal collaborator who destroyed a patriot organization. You're our poster child. You're under arrest, Chen said. On what evidence? Everything I've said is protected speech. William raised his hands. I'm just a grieving grandfather. He turned to his truck. Enjoy your federal protection, Mr. Wilson. You'll need it. Daniel realized William had sacrificed James to test federal response, turning their victory into a recruitment tool. Every arrest would generate sympathy, every agent a target. 6 months later, Daniel stood on his rebuilt porch, watching his nephew and niece chase fireflies. The house had reinforced windows, improved security, clear sight lines, but it was home. Uncle Daniel, look. 8-year-old Jamal held a jar with blinking fireflies. I caught the fast ones. Great, buddy. Let them go before bedtime. Why? Because they belong outside with their families. Sarah appeared, wiping her hands. Dinner's ready and I made enough for Betty. Betty arrived carrying a dish, buzzing with news. Y'all heard? That awful William Carter got arrested. FBI swarmed his place. Sheriff Morrison said they found enough for sedition. We heard, Sarah said. Betty, you look gleeful. That man's been poisoning this county for 50 years. His daddy was in the Klan, his son, and he raised James to carry on. Seeing him face justice is like Christmas. Over dinner, Betty shared gossip. The FBI was reading his emails before he sent them. All that talk about strategy. He used the same app every extremist uses. Daniel nodded. Agent Chen said William thought the federal response would generate recruits. Instead, it drove people away. Hate crimes are down 60%. Recruitment at historic lows. When people saw James's crew arrested and sentenced, they decided extremism wasn't worth it. Betty laughed. Serves him right. He thought he was the smartest in the room. After dinner, Sarah seemed troubled. William said you'd become a symbol, attracting extremists. For a while, I worried he was right, Daniel admitted. But Chen showed me crime stats. Dismantling their leadership proved actions have consequences. True believers remain, but without organization, they're just angry individuals. Betty emerged from cleaning. My granddaughter starts Georgia Tech next month, full scholarship, engineering. She said seeing you refuse intimidation gave her courage to apply for programs she never considered. That's real victory, Daniel. Not just stopping bad people, but inspiring good ones. Chen's final message confirmed. Network dismantled. 127 arrests across 7 states. Assets seized. William faces life in prison. Threat to you minimal. Well done. Daniel powered off his phone. Tomorrow brought normal challenges. Home repairs, family visits, community involvement. The existential threat was gone. A train whistle echoed, the same sound that welcomed him 8 months ago. Millbrook had been tested and emerged stronger, facing its demons, choosing a better path. Daniel had found purpose, family, peace. He opened the firefly jar, watching them drift into the darkness. Some old lies finally died when exposed to the truth.